Hey, good morning. It's Thursday, my favorite day of the week. I'm Ross. Thanks so much for being here. We're expecting Senator Ron Johnson to join us momentarily. This ties in really well to the topic of my Ross report about how people are talking about the election. We had Senator Rand Paul yesterday in this hearing saying that the election was stolen in a lot of ways. A lot of people are saying stuff like that, but there isn't actually any good evidence for it. Now, I've talked a lot about that side already, that I don't think this election was stolen, and I think probably most people are not doing themselves or the country any favors by all of this stuff, the steal stuff. But the other side is actually at least as important, maybe more important, and that is year after year in state after state, Democrats oppose every measure that is aimed at reinforcing election integrity. And that's got to stop. And they need to be called out for it. You know, the public needs to know whenever, for whatever reason, Democratic legislators at the state level or anywhere else. I mean, we've seen it here in Colorado, and I'm sure Ron Johnson has seen it in Wisconsin, where people were in the state legislature, they put up some kind of measure designed to make election fraud more difficult, and Democrats oppose it. And it's easy to understand why one might reach the conclusion that Democrats want to allow election fraud to continue to exist, which is not the same thing as saying that this election was stolen, but it's something we got to get a handle on. Joining us right now to talk about, well, a bunch of stuff in the minutes we'll have together this morning, Senator Ron Johnson himself from the great state of Wisconsin held a hearing in the Senate. I don't want to butcher the name of the committee, Homeland Security and Government Affairs. Is that right?
Governmental affairs. Really close, Ross. Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. One quick thing before we get to all the politics. I need to know, because I just read about this as far as your state, a thing in your state. Have you had a cannibal sandwich?
No, no.
You're not.
I really appreciate that fire was invented and we can cook meat now. So.
All right. That's funny. I would eat one if I were there, but that's all right. So you had quite the interesting hearing yesterday. A lot of people want to talk about the interaction between you and Gary Peters, but I want to talk about whether you believe that the election was actually stolen, or whether you believe more as a general thing that there are significant issues of election integrity in a macro sense that we need to be addressing going forward.
Yeah, the latter. And I appreciate you focusing on the substance of the hearing, because it was a record-long hearing for my chairmanship. And there was a lot of really good substance, but people need to look at it. And that's what has not happened. You know, one of the things that came out is that, you know, you say 60 court cases, and they've all been decided against the president. Well, so many of those court cases were dismissed due to lack of standing. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, in a scathing dissenting opinion by the Chief Justice, really ripped into the four justices that were on the majority of that decision, just saying you didn't look or analyze or rule on the law. That is the court's responsibility. We're just absolving ourselves of responsibility to actually rule on the law, and they come up with, you know, some weasel way of not really confronting the issue, and they set it aside. So that is what is so frustrating is, you know, it's very difficult. By the way, I've been doing 6 years of investigation now as chairman of this committee. It's hard to uncover wrongdoing. You know, people who do things wrong, they cover it up. And so, you know, the problem with the election fraud is it's hard to prove, you know, all the fraud. It's hard to bring people to justice. You know, for absentee ballots, you know, once they've separated the ballot from the envelope, okay, you can prove that these envelopes were, you know, not validly filled out or the signatures didn't match. But if the ballots have already been separated, the remedy is awful. That's part of the problem in Wisconsin. There are 220,000 ballots that there were problems with, that if you really read the law, they should not have been accepted, but they were, and they were counted. And in many cases, by the way, it's not the voters' fault that clerks of court didn't follow the law that the state legislature passed. So there are so many instances of irregularities that have never been fully explored and vetted. The news media, and again, I watch them to say, the courts have dismissed this evidence. Well, they just dismissed it without looking at it. And that is what is so frustrating about this. No, that's not true across the board. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of irregularities that have been explained. Problems that I hate using this word debunked, because all the news media needs to do is debunk one thing and then, okay, that's it. It's discredited. Pay no attention. The point I was trying to make, and the reason I held the hearing, is you have a large percentage of the American population that have legitimate concerns about this election, that don't have confidence that it was legitimate. That's not sustainable in this nation. We've just gone through 4 years when the other side refused to accept President Trump's legitimacy, and now here we are. But you are right in your opening comments here. It's the Democrats that are pushing the envelope. They're the ones that are opposed to voter ID. Why? Because they want to make it easier to commit fraud. That's the only reason. It's the obvious reason. What they did to change all these rules, taking advantage of the pandemic, to make it more widely acceptable to have mail-in and absentee balloting, even though the Carter-Baker Commission pointed out this is years ago that absentee balloting presents a real opportunity for fraud.
So, Ron, are you saying, do you believe that the reason that Democrats pushed so aggressively for more mail-in balloting is because they wanted more fraud versus they wanted people to be able to participate in an election more safely during a pandemic?
We all go to the grocery store, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't. I voted in person. I wasn't afraid. We socially distanced. I wore a mask. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty obvious. There may be some Democrats that's really their true motivation, but when you've seen all the measures they've tried to push when it comes to mail-in balloting, when you see what they're trying to do in terms of an unsecure border, incentivizing people to come into the border, which, by the way, we are seeing a huge spike in illegal immigration again. Because now Biden won, he's going to be offering free health care, right? Wasn't that their campaign plank? All those incentives are coming in. Why do they want people coming in this country illegally? Part of the reason is, and they want people that, they want people that are in this country illegally to be able to vote, because they're going to vote for Democrats is their feeling. So yeah, to me it's obvious. The press will never cover it because the press is part and parcel of the Democratic Party, the movement on the left, and and what got my ire up in the hearing is, first of all, Peters is calling it a dangerous hearing. Evaluating information is not dangerous. Okay, that's what freedom looks like, and that's what freedom sounds like. Okay, but the fact that he brings up and injects Russian disinformation into that hearing again, I had it. I was sick of it. But we've heard this for 4 years. It's the Russian disinformation canard. They've accused me of accepting and disseminating it. It's false. Nothing could be further from the truth. And yet, when you take a look at what the media and the social media did in terms of interfering in this election, determining the outcome through their censorship and suppression, their interference in our electoral system is far greater than anything Russia ever could have hoped to achieve in 2016.
Yeah, what they did with the Hunter Biden story was despicable. But I wanted to let me just ask you a couple quick follow-ups on the election. Then I want to ask you briefly about the Russian hack. We just have a couple minutes left. And if you're just joining, my special guest, Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin, chairman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. So, Ron, I believe there's always some election fraud. I don't believe that election fraud was big enough to change the outcome in this election. What do you think of that second point? Do you believe that fraud changed the result in the 2020 presidential election?
I would say we really don't know. But what we do know is we have a process, and it's gone through the court system, as imperfect as that is. Again, I don't like the fact that some of these courts just dismiss this. They didn't give the plaintiffs enough time to develop evidence. It's hard to develop evidence. So I would say we really don't know, but I accept our process. So the courts have decided, the Electoral College has voted 306 electoral votes for Biden, and I accept the reality.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a narrative out there that all it takes is for one senator and one House member to object, and then all of a sudden the election is decided by a vote of the states where we have an advantage. That's not true. What happens is if somebody objects, you're objecting to one state's electoral votes, and all members vote on that. So I can't imagine a situation where the Democrat-controlled House would vote to eliminate any of Joe Biden's 306 electoral votes.
Mm-hmm. I don't think the Senate would vote for it either.
I doubt it. Certainly not enough to bring him below 270 electoral votes, and that's the only way that you'd go to that vote by the states in terms of who's going to be the next president. So it's not possible. So that is misinformation that's out there that is harmful.
I think our biggest problem in this election and in elections going forward was state election officials and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court changing election law in a way that they were not allowed to do, and increasing not only the ability to commit fraud, but maybe even more importantly, the perception that maybe the election isn't fair. And that's the stuff that we got to clean up going forward. Now, I want to ask you just very quickly, Ron, because this all right, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, because that's the process problem. But the biggest problem with our elections is the biased media. They are tilting our politics by their bias and by their censorship and by the suppression. That is really what is in control of our elections right now. The media and the social media. That is our biggest problem moving forward on a host of issues. These companies have amassed way too much power. Way too much power.
We should talk about that another day. Like, what's a proper way to resolve that issue for somebody who believes in freedom? And let's do that another day. But give me like 45 seconds on your thoughts on this massive Russian hack and the news that the government's Einstein system was just very poorly designed and wasn't able to catch this stuff.
Well, first of all, the cyber attackers, the people on offense, have an advantage. They just do. I think we have closed the gap between offense and cyber defense, but we've got a long way to go, and we'll probably never catch up. So, we are information technology economy now, and we are vulnerable, and we are going to continue to be vulnerable. So we need to do everything we can to boost our defenses. We've tried. We stood up CISA, but the private sector is really where we need to look for solutions. We're going to need those Silicon Valley companies to step up the plate and provide cybersecurity, while at the same time they're having a very harmful effect on our politics.
I hope they come to realize what they're doing to our politics. I agree with you that they're a very major negative force right now. I just, and again, we'll talk about it another day. I don't know what a solution is that is consistent with living in a free country. Senator Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin. If you try cannibal sandwich, you will report back to us next time on how it was.
I will not have a Merry Christmas. I'll eat turkey or ham.
You have a very Merry Christmas and a great New Year. We'll talk with you in 2021, Ron.
Take care.
See ya. All right. There you go. Very aggressive, right? But saying, look, I respect the process. Joe Biden is, I don't know that he used the term president-elect. I'm not sure if he did or not, but that was the tone there. And also the other thing that I got from the conversation with Ron kind of implicitly is that he will probably not be a vote in the Senate to challenge the electoral votes of any one state. That was interesting, too. We'll be right back with Kurt Cambier.
Denver's talk station. Available everywhere with the iHeartRadio app.
Now #1 for podcasting.
630 KHOW, an iHeartRadio station.